Hello, I'm Eric Huang. You're listening to Saint Podcast, a podcast about the always fascinating and often controversial lives of the saints. This is a history and culture podcast that traces the origins of morality tales of the saints, also known as hagiographies, and how they continue to impact life today. This ongoing series of Saint Podcast is dedicated to martyrs, saints who died as a result of their beliefs. Over the next 6 episodes, we'll hear about martyred saints ranging from a queen who bested the brightest minds of the Roman Empire, the patron saint of music, twin brothers who are both doctors, and more. Saint Podcast Episode 4 is about another virgin saint. Her legend is similar to Saint Margaret's, a virgin saint from the last episode. Both are founding members of the 14 Holy Helpers, both lost their mothers at an early age, and both converted to Christianity, much to the dismay of their pagan fathers. Today's hagiography includes imprisonment in a tower, likely one of the inspirations behind the European fairytale Rapunzel. This saint isn't confined to European traditions, though. Her cult was adopted by Africans brought to the Americas as slaves, and became one of the most powerful Afro-American deities. This is the story of Saint Barbara, the maiden in the tower. Saint Barbara isn't in the Bible. The first mention of this saint comes from Roman sources in the 7th century. Evidence of her worship and cult don't surface until 200 years later. Both of these are from the Eastern Roman Empire, modern-day Turkey, Syria, Palestine, Lebanon, and Egypt. The complete story of Saint Barbara is first found in Speculum Maius, an ambitious 13th century compendium of all the knowledge available at the time. It was written by a Dominican friar named Vincent of Beauvais. An almost identical Saint Barbara story then appears in an expanded Golden Legend. This isn't the Golden Legend we've been referring to in previous episodes. Saint Barbara doesn't appear in the original edition. Her story surfaces nearly 200 years later, in a new edition, with new hagiographies and edits to many of the original stories. This newly expanded Golden Legend was translated into English in 1483 by William Caxton. William Caxton was an English diplomat and businessman, credited with introducing the printing press to England and translating numerous European texts into English for the first time. It's William Caxton's version of St. Barbara's legend that we'll explore today. Like all the saints we've met so far, St. Barbara was a Roman citizen. She was born sometime in the middle of the 3rd century during the reign of Emperor Maximian. The place of her birth is sometimes said to be in Nicomedia in present-day Turkey, but also Rome, Tuscany, and Antioch. The most widely circulated legend, and the one in Caxton's translation, names Heliopolis in Lebanon as her hometown. This is where we will set St. Barbara's story. Barbara is born in Heliopolis to wealthy pagan parents. Her mother dies when she's just a baby, leaving her father, Dioscorus, to raise her alone. Barbara grows up into a very beautiful young woman. Her father wishes to protect her from the leering eyes of men, so he builds a tower for her to live in, her prison, but also her sanctuary. The tower offers stunning views of the surrounding countryside, which inspires a young Barbara to contemplate the divine creator, or creators, of the natural beauty she commands from above. News of this incredibly attractive young woman kept in a tower by her father spreads throughout the Roman Empire. Princes from far and wide journey to Heliopolis to ask Dioscorus for Barbara's hand in marriage. Eager to find a good husband for his daughter, Dioscorus asks Barbara's opinion on those he feels worthy of her. She isn't interested in any of them and replies,
"My father, I pray you that ye will not constrain me to marry, for thereto I have no will nor thought."
Dioscorus drops the matter and allows his daughter some freedom to leave the tower and see the world a bit. Perhaps some time in the real world would help Barbara grow up a little, understand the need for her to find a husband, and the privileged position she's in being wooed by princes. What Dioscorus doesn't anticipate is that once Barbara leaves the tower, she meets Christians, practitioners of an illegal religion. A peddler from the local market befriends Barbara one day. He isn't really a peddler, though. He's a priest in disguise who had traveled to Heliopolis from the Egyptian city of Alexandria to convert pagans. Barbara is baptized in secret and becomes a Christian. In other versions of the story, Barbara's conversion to Christianity is due to a book that a Christian villager secretly places in her basket. Barbara becomes obsessed with the book, desperate to learn more about the religion, so much so that she falls ill. Alarmed, her father calls a doctor, who turns out to be a Christian priest in disguise. He teaches Barbara about Christianity whilst nursing her back to health and secretly baptizes her. However it happens, Barbara is now a Christian. None the wiser, her father leaves her alone in the tower for an extended business trip. Before leaving, he had decided to build a private bath for his daughter. Construction begins shortly after he departs. One day, Barbara notices the builders installing 2 windows in the bathroom, one in the south, the other in the north. She becomes outraged and confronts the workmen.
Make me here another window. Do and make that I command you, and I shall content my father, and shall excuse you against him.
Barbara wanted a 3rd window, so that the 3 together could represent the Trinity, the 3 forms of the Christian God. She tells the workmen to ignore her father's directions, and that she'd take any blame for the last-minute change in plans. She then walks to the east wall, where the 3rd window ought to be, and draws a cross with her finger. Miraculously, the cross etches itself into the marble wall. Despite this, the workmen are still unsure if they should follow this child's plan. So Barbara approaches the bath itself, now filling with dirty water from a polluted well. She makes the sign of the cross, and the water starts running as clear as the clearest spring. Barbara is said to have then baptized a man in the bath and discovered that all the ailments he had were healed once he touched the water. Additional healing miracles then occurred in the bath. The workmen are amazed and install the 3rd window in honor of the Trinity, just as Barbara had requested. The bath itself became quite legendary. Writings from the 10th century onwards attest to its miraculous nature, comparing Barbara's bath to sacred bodies of water like the Fountain of Siloam, where Jesus made a blind man see after washing his eyes. St. Simeon the Metaphrast, a 10th century writer from Constantinople, even likened St. Barbara's bath to the River of Jordan, which is mentioned several times in the Bible as a sacred place and a key source of miracles. It was the River of Jordan that the tribes of Israel crossed to reach the Promised Land. It was this river that cured the Syrian general Naaman of leprosy, and it was in the same river that Jesus Christ was baptized by John the Baptist. The healing properties of water are part of every belief system around the world. The magical properties of water inspired poets in the ancient world and motivated European explorers to search for mythical fountains of youth. Water is cleansing, both literally and spiritually, a key part of purification rituals in Christian baptisms, Buddhist offerings, and Hindu festivals. Sacred springs and thermal baths, scientifically proven for health benefits, are active sites of pilgrimage and tourism even today. Notably is the Barbarathamen, or Barbara Baths, in Trier, a city in southwest Germany that was founded by the Celts. Every culture that controlled the city regarded the baths as a spiritual place for healing and wellness. In the 2nd century, Romans turned the baths into a health spa complex with restaurants, a beauty salon, performance venue, and a library, all for the good of your health. Today, the Barbarathamen is in ruins, an UNESCO World Heritage Site adjacent to the Cathedral of St. Peter and Church of Our Lady in Trier. Botanicas and other spiritual goods shops sell multiple lines of St. Barbara branded bubble baths, spring water, soap, and bath salts to ward off evil, heal what ails you, or just provide some moments of peace with a relaxing bath. So Barbara had convinced the workmen hired by her father to change the plans, adding an extra window in honor of the Trinity. When Barbara returns to her tower that day, she notices again her father's pagan statues that decorate their home. This time, she senses great evil in them. So she picks up each one, miraculously scratching out the faces carved in marble, then smashing them to bits. Upon his return, Dioscorus is surprised to see his statuary destroyed and 3 windows instead of 2 in the bath. The workmen tell him to talk to his daughter, and he confronts her. She replies,
I have done them to be made because 3 windows lighten all the world and all creatures, but 2 make darkness.
This is a statement about Barbara's newfound religion. 3 windows, in honor of the Trinity, symbolize her faith in the Christian God, which lightens the world. According to Barbara, her father's devotion to the Roman gods makes darkness like the original plan with 2 windows. Barbara tells her father that she's now a Christian. Outraged, Dioscorus draws his sword, ready to strike down his daughter. There are differing accounts of what happens next. Some say angels or the Virgin Mary fly Barbara to the safety of a mountaintop. Alternately, the very bedrock on which the tower was built miraculously swallows her, creating a tunnel that leads Barbara to this same mountaintop. Arab Christians tell of how St. Barbara runs through a freshly planted wheat field, which miraculously grows behind her, obscuring her path. Still other versions mix elements or simply state that Barbara runs away from her father without any divine aid. Once in the safety of the mountaintop, every version of the story agrees that Barbara meets 2 shepherds who give her shelter and food and agree to hide her from her father, who's in hot pursuit. Dioscorus soon encounters the 2 shepherds. The first denies any knowledge of his daughter, keeping her whereabouts a secret. The second, however, labeled an evil man by all sources, gives up Barbara. Some accounts state that the second shepherd's betrayal was motivated by greed. Dioscorus was a well-known wealthy man. The second shepherd had hoped to be rewarded handsomely for helping return Barbara to her rich father. This doesn't happen. When Barbara sees that she's been forsaken, she curses the second shepherd. His flock of sheep turn into locusts, and the shepherd himself turns to stone. Barbara had been found by her father. He drags her down the mountaintop by her hair and locks her in the tower. Because Christianity is an illegal religion, the local authorities are called to take her away to a central jail to await judgment. Martinianus, the prefect of Heliopolis who presides over Barbara's trial, is stunned by her beauty. Quietly, he offers her a way out of a death sentence. She need only blaspheme against the Christian God, and he'll release her unharmed. Barbara refuses.
I offer myself to God, Jesus Christ, the which hath created heaven and earth and all other things, and fie on your devils which have mouths and cannot speak. They have eyes and cannot see. They have ears and hear not. They have noses and smell not. They have hands and may not feel, and they have feet and may not go. They that make them, be they made in semblance to them, and all they that have fiance and belief in them.
Barbara reaffirms her devotion to the Christian God and criticizes the pagan idols and those that make and worship them for being no more than grotesque figures of stone. Publicly embarrassed by Barbara's words, Martinianus commands his men to torture her. They beat her naked body with sinews made of bull hide, then rub salt into the wounds. That evening, Barbara's bloodied body is thrown into prison. A divine light heals all of Barbara's wounds by morning. Recall that this is also part of St. Margaret's legend from the last St. Podcast episode. When her jailer sees her healed body, he remarks that the Roman gods must have healed her. Surely she ought to renounce the Christian faith and give immediate sacrifice to the Olympian gods. Barbara sets him straight.
He that healed me is Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the which will not have thee, because thy heart is so indurate and hard with the devils.
Barbara rebukes the authorities, and so another round of tortures ensues. Her body is hung between 2 forked trees and raked with staves. Burning lamps are brought to her body to burn her. Every attempt is unsuccessful, though. Her body miraculously heals after each ordeal, and every torch that approaches her body extinguishes itself. Barbara is then subjected to yet additional tortures, including being beaten and getting her head smashed with a mallet. Finally, the hangman is commanded to cut off Barbara's breasts, after which she's to be paraded through the streets to be mocked. Barbara prays,
Lord God, that coverest heaven with clouds, I pray thee to cover my body, to the end that it be not seen of the evil people.
An angel answers Barbara's prayers. Her wounds are healed, and she finds her body covered by a heavenly tunic. Thus clothed, Barbara marches to the neighboring town of Delacian, where she's condemned to die by beheading. Barbara's father, Dioscorus, demands that he be allowed to kill his own daughter. The judge agrees, and Dioscorus leads Barbara up a hill where she prays, then submits to her execution and death. When the deed is done, Dioscorus descends from the hill. Before he can reach the bottom, though, a fire from heaven, lightning, strikes him dead, reducing him to ashes. In some versions of St. Barbara's legend, another woman is martyred alongside her. The woman's name is Juliana, a pagan who takes pity on Barbara and loudly denounces the torturers. The authorities arrest Juliana, and she suffers the same fate as the saint. A 15th century French hagiography adds another detail to St. Barbara's death. It was Barbara's dying wish that all of her followers be automatically given the sacraments of penance and extreme unction before they die. Sacraments are Christian rites that are visible, physical symbols of the existence of God, and also God's grace, a divine influence that can inspire or provide strength in times of need. The definition varies in subtlety between Christian denominations. The 7 sacraments recognized by the modern Catholic Church are baptism, confirmation, Eucharist, penance, extreme unction, marriage, holy orders. The sacraments mentioned by St. Barbara according to this story are penance and extreme unction, which is often today called anointing the sick. Penance is a rite of forgiveness in which sins are erased. Extreme unction is a blessing for those who are mortally ill, essentially last rites. For medieval Christians, extreme unction and the final or last penance were necessities if one wished to go to heaven after death. St. Barbara's incorruptible body, a body that hasn't decayed since death, is said to be encased in an ebony coffin at St. Vladimir Cathedral in Kiev. How it got there is a story in itself. After her martyrdom, St. Barbara's body was buried in her hometown of Heliopolis in modern-day Lebanon by a Christian named Valentinus. Numerous miracles are attributed to the site of her burial, 13 in total, which are listed in the French hagiography we talked about earlier. Some of these involved a dismembered talking head, St. Barbara's head. Other miracles include a prisoner who prayed to St. Barbara and survived without eating any food because of his devotion, and also an innocent man accused of rape who was saved from execution by the intervention of St. Barbara. In the 6th century, Barbara's body was exhumed and moved from Heliopolis to Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantium Empire, modern-day Istanbul. When the relics or sacred remains of a saint are moved, it's called a translation. St. Barbara's body was translated from Heliopolis to Constantinople. In the 12th century, a princess named Barbara, after the saint, married Michael Izyaslevich, the Grand Prince of Kiev. Princess Barbara was daughter of Emperor Komnenos, the ruler of Byzantium. Given she was named Barbara, and given her husband was ruler over Kiev, the pair decided to translate St. Barbara's body once again, this time from Constantinople to Kiev, as part of their wedding procession to the princess's new home. St. Barbara's body remained in Kiev at St. Michael's Golden Domed Monastery until the 1930s. Numerous first-hand accounts of pilgrims who viewed the body exist. Here's the first surviving account from a man named Laurentius Muller. It was published in 1585 in Frankfurt, Germany.
The body of a young woman rests in an archway all on its own, looking beautiful and gentle, covered with a small, delicate, and transparent linen sheet, with long yellow hair, without any decomposition, so that one can see and grasp all the limbs. They believe and report in these parts that it is St. Barbara, but whether such like agrees with her story, the reader can research and judge for themselves.
The mention of golden hair suggests there was a head attached to the body. Muller also mentions a lack of decay. Photos of the body today show that it's been mummified. The golden hair has been mentioned by other pilgrims through the centuries. Sometimes a gilded wooden crown was seen on top of the head. In 1935, during the Communist Revolution, St. Michael's Golden Dome Monastery was vandalized. Many of its treasures were destroyed or looted. St. Barbara's body was saved and moved to St. Vladimir's Cathedral in Kiev, where it remains today. Visitors can still see the intact body, head and all, on her feast day, the 4th of December. Incidentally, the monastery of Megaspileo in Kalavrita in Greece claims to have St. Barbara's skull, kept in a pot made of gold. The Church of St. Mark in Venice has claims to a number of St. Barbara's bones, which made a tour of Greece in 2015. Church officials are in an ongoing dispute over whose relics are authentic. It was a princess named Barbara who moved or translated the saint's incorruptible body from Constantinople to Kiev. St. Barbara has another princess connection, a link to a Disney princess, Rapunzel. The story of Rapunzel was popularized in the Brothers Grimm 1812 fairy tale compilation, Children's and Household Tales. In this version, a young couple lives near a magnificent garden. The wife, who's pregnant, notices the edible leaves of a plant called Rapunzel. She has urgent cravings for it and is unable to eat anything else. Worried for the health of his wife and unborn child, the husband sneaks into the garden to steal Rapunzel leaves for his wife to eat. The garden is owned by a sorceress who catches him. The man faces certain death unless he agrees to give the sorceress his child at the moment of birth. Thinking he can easily outsmart her and renege on his part of the bargain, the man agrees and returns to his family. Before their baby is born, the couple move far, far away. Months later, when the wife gives birth to a baby girl with golden hair, however, the sorceress magically appears at their door and claims the child. She names the baby Rapunzel after the plant that was stolen. When Rapunzel turns 12, the sorceress locks her in a tower with neither doors nor stairs, only one room and a window. One day, a handsome prince passes nearby and hears Rapunzel's enchanting voice as she sings. Try as he might, however, he can't find an entrance to the tower. Smitten, he returns daily to keep Rapunzel company and listen to her lovely song. On one of the visits, he arrives just in time to see the sorceress. He hides and watches as she cries out to Rapunzel.
Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair, that I may climb thy golden stair.
Upon completing the rhyme, Rapunzel's hair magically lowers, allowing the sorceress to climb up and enter the tower. When the sorceress leaves, the prince reveals himself and repeats the rhyme. Like the sorceress, he then climbs Rapunzel's hair into the tower. The pair fall in love, and they plan their escape. Every night, the prince will visit Rapunzel and bring a piece of silk that she can use to weave into a ladder. Before he can bring her enough pieces of silk, though, Rapunzel mistakenly gives their plan away by mentioning how tight her dress has become. The sorceress knows immediately this means Rapunzel has been with a man and is pregnant. She cuts off Rapunzel's hair and casts her out into the wilderness. That night, the prince arrives as usual and speaks the magical rhyme. When he climbs the hair to the tower, it's the sorceress instead of Rapunzel who greets him. In a panic, the prince leaps from the tower. The briars below break his fall, but they blind him. For years, the prince wanders the forest alone, until one day he hears a woman's voice singing, Rapunzel's voice. He follows the song until he's reunited with his beloved and their twin children. Rapunzel's tears of joy cure the prince of his blindness, and the two return to his kingdom with their children to become king and queen. The Brothers Grimm Rapunzel was based on a French translation of a Neapolitan story from 1634 called Petronella. This was written by Giambattista Basile. The protagonist's name, Petronella, means parsley in Italian, in reference to the parsley her mother stole, not from a sorceress, but an ogress. In this story, Petronella and her prince are able to escape together, leaving the tower with a ladder procured by the prince and 3 magic acorns that Petronella takes from the ogress. As the ogress gives chase, Petronella throws the first acorn, which turns into a dog, distracting the ogress, who feeds it a loaf of bread. The second acorn becomes a lion, which the ogress feeds a donkey from a nearby field. She then takes the donkey's skin to wear as a coat. When Petronella throws the third acorn at the ogress, it turns into a wolf who eats the ogress, mistaking her for a delicious donkey. Both of these Rapunzel stories come from an ancient archetype which folklorists call maiden in the tower tales. The earliest of these are linked to the Baltic solar goddess, Sauli, which literally means the sun. In a Lithuanian legend, Sauli, the sun, was a golden-haired goddess created by a metalsmith who threw her into the sky. A giant fell in love with Sauli and imprisoned her in a tower, casting eternal darkness upon the earth. It was the sky itself, called Zodiac, that saved Sauli, returning her to her rightful place in the heavens. The ancient Greek legend of Perseus, the hero that killed Medusa, tells of how his mother, Princess Danae, was also locked in a tower by her father because an oracle predicted she would bear a son that would kill him one day. The maiden in the tower trope appears yet again in the 10th century epic poem Shahnameh by the Persian writer Ferdowsi. It features a familiar heroine who lowers her hair so her love interest might climb up a tower to enter the harem where she lives. The handsome hero of this maiden in the tower story advises against this, suggesting it might be easier and safer to use a rope or ladder. And of course, the legend of St. Barbara, another maiden trapped in a tower by her father, is cited as an inspiration for the Rapunzel fairy tale. St. Barbara's story was included in a 1405 literary work called The Book of the City of Ladies, written by Christine de Pizan. De Pizan was a Venetian author and poet who served as the court writer for King Charles VI, the ruler of France at the time. The book was a celebration of women as valued participants in society. It was really ahead of its time, advocating the education of women and even hinting at equal rights. De Pizan included St. Barbara along with other legendary strong women like Isis, the Queen of Sheba, Mary Magdalene, Medea, the Virgin Mary, Circe, and more. It was a widely read book that would have influenced later writers of Rapunzel. St. Barbara's legend has many historic inaccuracies, as well as conflicting information on when she was born and where. Many of the figures associated with her legend don't exist in historical records, from her father to the prefect, and even the Princess Barbara, who translated her body. It's because of these inaccuracies and the fantastical nature of her legend that St. Barbara's feast day of the 4th of December does not appear in the general Roman calendar, the Catholic Church's schedule of recognized saints and their holy days. The Eastern Orthodox Church still recognizes St. Barbara. She remains one of the most popular Christian saints, and her cult has surpassed the worship of many others. When the Atlantic slave trade began in the 1500s, many slave owners in the Americas forcibly converted African men and women to Christianity. In some instances, particularly in Haiti and Louisiana, many held on to their native beliefs, practicing their outlawed religions in secret. In order to not raise suspicion from their overlords, they substituted Christian figures for their own gods. St. Barbara was one of these. Because her legend involved a lightning strike, the one that killed her father, she became associated with the Orisha or spirit named Shango from the religion of the Yoruba people in West Africa. Shango was a historic figure, a ruler of the Oyo Empire, which straddles the modern-day countries of Nigeria and Benin. In death, he became a powerful deity who wields thunder and lightning like Zeus, Thor, and St. Barbara. Paintings and medallions of St. Barbara from Afro-Cuban Santeria communities are sometimes simultaneously worshipped as Shango and St. Barbara. The Catholic Church in Haiti mixes ancient Yoruba beliefs with modern Catholicism, especially in funeral rites, which mix traditional customs with a requiem mass. In the Afro-Brazilian religions of Candomblé and Umbanda, St. Barbara is identified as Yansen, an unbeatable warrior queen who commands the wind, thunder, lightning, and storms. Yansen is like the comic book character Storm from the X-Men series, a powerful deity who wields lightning and controls the weather. The mixing and melding of religions is called syncretism. It occurs all the time and throughout time. The Greek god Zeus was syncretized with the Egyptian god Ammon, creating Zeus Ammon, who was worshipped throughout the Greek world, even by Alexander the Great, who declared he was the descendant of this hybrid god, the leaders of both the Greek and Egyptian pantheons. Both Japanese and Chinese Buddhism are highly modified versions of the religion that originated in India. The history of how Buddhism came to China is a legend in itself, a syncretic epic about a monk and a magical monkey king popularized by TV shows like Monkey Magic and the electro dance opera Journey to the West by musicians Damon Albarn and Jamie Hewlett and director Chen Shizhen. The Monkey King legend, as well as Chinese Buddhism itself, syncretize countless tales and deities from Taoist and other indigenous beliefs with the traditional gods and sacred rites from India. The Afro-Cuban deity Shango is a male god. The Christian saint Barbara is a female figure. Devotees didn't have a problem with this because the syncretization was solely focused on an association with lightning. It's lightning that also makes St. Barbara the patron saint of artillery, armor, miners, tunnelers, chemical engineers, firefighters, and even the Russian missile strategic forces. In the modern day, St. Barbara has sort of become the patron saint of demolition and explosions. St. Barbara is the patron saint of nearly every artillery corps from New Zealand to Portugal. The United States Field Artillery Association and the U.S. Army Air Defense Artillery Association maintain the Order of St. Barbara to honor exceptional service in the U.S. Army and U.S. Marine Corps. The artillery corps of both Greece and Greek Cyprus celebrate St. Barbara's feast day by hosting a parade and doling out lakma, deep-fried dough soaked in honey shaped like little cannonballs. As the patron saint of miners and tunnelers, a small statue of St. Barbara is often kept in tunnels, at its entrance, or at the point where workers are tunneling or mining. Engineers constructing the Crossrail, a new underground line being excavated right now in London, maintain a St. Barbara shrine to protect the workers. Check out St. Podcast's social media pages to see the shrine. Mines and tunnels in Bavaria, Scotland, Mexico, Poland, Italy, Brazil, Australia, the Philippines all feature shrines dedicated to St. Barbara, some continuously lit by candles, which also serve to monitor the air quality. Many of these mines and tunnels are also named after St. Barbara, including one of the largest gold mining operators based in Australia, with gold mines on 3 continents. Because Barbara is the patron saint of firefighters, many firefighting organizations look after St. Barbara feast day celebrations on the 4th of December, particularly in France and Italy. Arab Christians celebrate St. Barbara's feast day in a Halloween-like tradition, in which revelers wear disguises and sing the story of St. Barbara as they go house to house for food and sweets. St. Barbara is the patron saint of Lebanon, where she was born, and also of the Sicilian town Paterno, which she saved from the plague in the 16th century and also miraculously prevented lava from the active volcano Mount Etna from obliterating the city. In Sicily, the phrase una Santa Barbara, a Saint Barbara, means an impressive weapons arsenal. Given its proximity to Christmas, St. Barbara's feast day celebrations often begin the Christmas season. In Provence, an ancient custom sees households leave water-soaked grain on windowsills on the 4th of December. If the St. Barbara grains sprout by Christmas, crops will flourish in the new year. If not, they'll fail. In Poland, the weather on St. Barbara's Day determines the weather on Christmas. Rain on the 4th of December means a cold, icy Christmas day. A cold, icy December 4th means a warm, rainy Christmas day. Also in Poland and other Central and Eastern European countries, cherry branches are broken off and taken indoors on the 4th of December. They're kept in a pot of water near the heater or a stove. The premature warmth forces the branches to bloom. If they bloom by Christmas Day, good luck will come to the person who cared for the blossoming branches. St. Barbara's image decorates countless medals and insignias from the aforementioned artillery, tunneling, mining, military, and firefighting organizations. She's also given her name to countless towns and cities around the world. The most famous, perhaps, is Santa Barbara in California. It was named after the saint because Spanish explorers docked in the area on the eve of St. Barbara's Day. In the mid-80s to mid-90s, a soap opera named Santa Barbara was set in this California seaside town, with plot lines to match some of the more fantastical legends around its namesake. Santa Barbara is also the name of a Portuguese soap opera that debuted in 2015 and is still on air. The plot is set in a fictional, forgotten Portuguese town, also called Santa Barbara, which has suddenly had a change of fortune, appropriately due to the reopening of a gold mine. Although St. Barbara is no longer officially recognized by the Catholic Church, her legend persists. In art, she is most often depicted holding the tower that imprisoned her. Medieval paintings depict her many gruesome tortures, and also her father, struck by lightning. Modern writers from Garcia Lorca to Thomas Pynchon and George Bernard Shaw found inspiration in the saint's story in their writings. St. Barbara lives on in holiday season festivals, underground in shrines guarding tunnels and mines, as a strong female manifestation of Afro-American gods, in a Portuguese soap opera, and perhaps in her most powerful form, as a Disney princess. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of St. Podcast, St. Barbara, the Maiden in the Tower. Special thanks to Amy Sloniker, who lives in Santa Barbara and provided the voice for St. Barbara and the readings in this episode. And big thanks once again to Amy Vanacore, who composed and performed the piano interludes. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to St. Podcast and leave a review. Feel free to follow our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter accounts for updates and images of the topics covered. Our email address is saintpodcast@gmail.com. That's saint spelled out, S-A-I-N-T. We'd love to hear from you. The next episode in St. Podcast's ongoing series about martyrs is about one of the first 7 deacons in the city of Rome. He came of age during a deadly round of Christian persecutions and met his end being roasted alive. Before he died, though, he was quoted as saying to the executioner, "Turn me over, I'm well done on this side." Tune in next time for the story of St. Lawrence, the patron saint of comedians.